was used for many purposes. One of the most important parts of it is near the river's mouth, called the delta. It is where water deposits fine soil called silt. The upper Nile is in the south, and the lower Nile is in the north. Heavy rain flooded the Nile every summer, which made the soil great for growing crops. The Egyptians lived in narrow bands of land on each side of the Nile, called black land. The Nile became a highway for travel and trade. They would trade their surpluses for goods they did not have.
It is the longest river on earth, the greatest river in Africa, crossing nearly half the continent. It is born of two rivers, the White Nile, which rises near Lake Victoria and heads north through Uganda, and the Blue Nile, which descends from the highlands of Ethiopia. They meet in the desert of Sudan, forming the main trunk of the Nile. By the time it drains into the Mediterranean Sea, its waters have journeyed more than 4,000 miles.
The Egyptians used a system called hieroglyphics for lettering and numbering. These were made from thousands of tiny pictures to make words. The pictures were either people, animals, or natural figures such as mountains and volcanoes.
Hermopolis was originally the ancient city of the Eight, or Khmunu, the capital of the Hare province. The god of health and wisdom, Thoth, was highly venerated here. Thoth was the patron of the scribes, and then identified with Hermes, from whom the city took its name of Hermopolis during the Greco-Roman era. The Copts continued to call it Khmunu, which explains its present-day Arabic name, Al-Ashmunayin.
The Egyptians had thousands of gods and goddesses. Queen Nefertiti only believed in one god and tried to talk her people into believing that too. The people would bow down to their gods and goddesses so they could have a good afterlife. They believed in afterlife.
Statues of Egyptian gods and goddesses can still be seen today thanks to archaeologists. Some of the more familiar ones are Re, the great sun god, who with his wife Mut and son Hans were the most important.
Hathor, symbolized by the cow's horns, was one of the oldest deities, and later became known as the goddess of love.
Osiris ruled the land of the dead, after having been brought back to life by Isis, his sister and wife, who then miraculously conceived their son Horus.
Mummies are dead bodies wrapped in linen and either put in sarcophaguses or nothing at all. The mummification process is very long and very expensive. It took approximately 70 days to finish embalming one body. Embalming means to take out all the organs from the body. High-ranking officials, priests, and other nobles who had served the pharaoh and his queen had fairly elaborate burials.
They removed the brain through an incision in the nose. They went in through the nose, broke through a bone called the ethmoid bone, which is basically behind your eyes, into the cranium. And then with a long hook tool, went inside and removed the brain a piece at a time.
Pyramids are large triangular buildings made to bury pharaohs and other high priest tombs. They were made from granite, limestone, which has a gold top, and marble brick. Khufu did not build his pyramid, instead he hired others. It took thousands of crews to build 7 pyramids.
The Egyptians had a very precise schedule every day. First, the farmer got out of bed, washed, and shaved. Then, the nobleman dressed in a kilt made from linen and put on leather sandals. The nobleman's wife got up. She put on glass ear studs, washed her face, and got dressed with the help of a servant. She wore a dress made of linen as well, and jewelry made of glass. She had a coal container with a cosmetic spoon, and applied coal to her eyelid, and went downstairs. Then she went next door to wake the children, and began her daily chores. In the afternoon, the nobleman's wife went out into the garden to escape the heat of the day. She stayed under a tree as she watched her children play with toys. The farmer and his workers left a basket at the temple, where they were counted and then added to the storeroom. The village shared a midday meal that consisted of bread, meat, and beer. Even the kids drank the beer. Later in the afternoon, the nobleman's wife began preparing for the evening banquet, as her servants brushed and curled her favorite wig. The farmer's wife spent a day grinding wheat and baking bread. In the afternoon, she walked down to the river with her children to collect water. At the end of the day, the Egyptians ate a meal of meat, bread, cakes, wine, figs, and dates. Then they all would say goodnight and go to bed. Also, the Egyptians made beautiful sculptures, which they called sphinx, and were made that had the head of a pharaoh and the body of a lion.
In Egypt, leaders were known as pharaohs. They served and helped their people stay in one unity. They were the leaders of their people, and the people would follow.
Turay graciously accepts her employment with the Sultan of Say.